are brands becoming evil today?
Yes, because they are working with fears of people.
More than a single view of what is right and wrong.
You come with a campaign that works in Austria, but not in this other country, and I don't want to mention another country.
Where should I base my system of values?
That is such a gut feeling you have as a manager doing things where you destroy people in other countries. That doesn't work.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the very first podcast of Skins Agency. And today I have the pleasure to have here Bettina Binder. I've met with Bettina in Startup Live. It's been 2 years ago, I believe, or a year and a half ago.
I think.
Oh, 1 year ago.
1 year, yeah. It was last year in May, I think.
Oh, that's very close. See, it feels to me like it's been ages that I know you.
Yes, for me too.
I've been in touch with you quite regularly since then, so that's a good sign for sure. So, for all of you out there, Bettina has worked for over 12 years at Allianz, among others as head of brand and performance marketing. She's been a digital media consultant for over 5 years at MediaCom, one of the world's leading marketing and media companies with a team of over 10,000 people across 94 markets. So that said, hopefully Bettina's experience is going to help us a lot. And so we're going to try to pick her brain on a lot of questions. But today, Bettina is a managing partner of Voller Ideen and runs an online business academy, helping people kickstart their businesses in just 12 weeks. So without further ado, Bettina, thank you so much for joining. It's such a pleasure to have you in this
You're
video
welcome,
today.
And thank you for your invitation. And I really hope that I can help you along with some more information on brand strategy I think we are talking today about. So I'm looking forward to talking to you, and thank you very much for the invitation.
Oh yeah, definitely. So for everyone out there, Bettina has been my mentor as well. So I did call her up and ask her a bunch of questions. So I'm absolutely sure there's a lot to be learned from Bettina. So tune in. Let's have this conversation.
Thank you.
I'll be right on it. Here's a question that, to me, it seems like everybody feels like they know, but then there's always a different definition that I hear from almost every person in the market. And this is what I'd love to hear first. So what is branding?
Well, for me, branding is giving a product, a company, or your offer the face to the customer. So on all stages of your customer journey, not only on the awareness phase where you have big placements and and show your huge company placements, but really for me is it really the face to the customer on the whole customer journey, on starting from awareness until having the client on your website or in your company buying a product, and also the after sales process. So for me, it's the face to the customer in general.
So that is very interesting, because for some people, and certainly the way that we try to put it out there, is the personality of the company. Now, you mentioned the face of the company, but you also mentioned the customer journey. And I think that's a very interesting sort of two bits of information that may come together very interestingly. So I guess, can you just expand on the idea of customer journey, and what kind of role does this face play for that customer journey? And I guess the subsequent question would be, what would a good brand strategy look like to you? Because if it is a face and if there's a journey, that means there needs to be a strategy walking that face across the journey. So what does it look like to you? And again, you've managed incredibly big brands. So how did you do it?
Interesting question. Some people they separate it so that you have brand strategy at the beginning, and then you have performance marketing at the end, and you have performance marketing on the website. And for me, it's every time the face to the customer, the feelings and the emotions the customer has to buy your product. So it starts with awareness, but comes to the end at having really a great customer journey that is really about having a good time on your website, having a good time buying your product, having a good time then in customer service times afterwards. So that's for me describing this customer journey thing, and also have to have a look on your data and your data strategy. So how you can really measure where your brand comes in and where your brand has an effect on your sales activities. And I personally think that you can't you can separate it in times of which media, which messages I use, but you can't separate it that you're doing big brand campaigns and ignore what is on your website and on your and social media. So really have these sentiments, have these emotions, have these feelings, people talking about you and your company. If you put this together, this is for me the face to the customer and the whole brand strategy.
That's very so. So this is something that I'll just piggyback off of what Jeff Bezos said. Right? It's people's what other people say about you, and you're not in the room. So it's all of that conversation. But you pinpoint on having a good time and sentiment, and I think that's crucial, and especially in my opinion, is one of the most important parts of what brands are doing today. But before I go into more detail with that, is getting people to have a good time with your brand, right? You mentioned that aspect of it, that sentiment. What are a few tips, or maybe just 3 tips, to actually get people to connect emotionally with your brand, to have that sentiment placed out there so that we as brand managers can hear it?
Well, first of all, I think that you need the reach and you have to be seen. Not only in times of putting a lot of money in doing awareness campaigns, but also in times of how do I communicate and how do I engage with people, and which platforms I'm using and what I'm talking there. So for me, the first tip is how you can get reach and how you can be seen in times of 2023 when talking about digital media, social media, and so on. So the second thing would be, for me, you really need to have a company which speaks real talk and not PR messages, things that are not real, things that are covered by good messages, great brand campaigns. So you can't say you are a successful, sustainable company if you are not this company, because it all will come across in your social media, sentiments and social media comments of people talking about you and your company. So that's the second one. And there's the third one. What was the concrete question? The third.
So how do we, basically it's 3 tips to make consumers react better to your brand, or to have that sort of sentiment put out there.
And yes, and the third one would be, for me, you really need to be authentic. You don't need to be a copycat, because you have a lot of times people and companies copying others. So for me, the third important point is really to be authentic and to be on point what the people need. And it really comes then to data and target groups, because earlier target groups, they have been 20 years old, living in Vienna, and having brown hair. Now you have so much data and information about people that you really can come to the point that you really are on the customer needs. And if you are customer centric and put this in your brand strategy, then you have this, I call it golden nugget, when you really manage to be on point of what people, how can you as company really help people along living a better life, more successful life, healthier life, what else?
But that puts a lot of pressure in the shoulders of the manager, or the person who's actually doing it. So what you're talking.
Yes, it really is. It really is. I think it's a much harder job than you had it years before. Because years before, you bought a TV campaign and said, okay, we are the great company, we are all the best, and yeah, good is, yeah. And you have the Coca-Cola truck all around the world, and everybody said, hey, cool, Coca-Cola. Now you really think about what are they doing? Yeah, what is Coca-Cola really about? What is with the sugar thing? What is about sustainable? How is this with the trucks? And so it's not easy to do a brand campaign and say I book millions of dollars or euros in a TV campaign and having my posters and everything is fine. It's really, really much more than you have had it 20 years before. But it's my opinion, yeah.
Oh,
So it is a huge pressure on people having to manage this, because it's so much more than you have this outline. You have really this inner thing that you have to be clear on everything you have in your company, and you have your PR, and you have your marketing, and you have your product, and you have your customer care center. And if anything there is not clear and not sustainable and not that, then you will have problems on the long run.
so I'm gonna put you in a corner right now with a question that is, I believe, really tough because so you mentioned all of these aspects that a brand manager has to deal with, but all of those points were from a company perspective. Now, right? Because you have the customer and you have the product and you have all the processes and you have your conversion rates, all that kind of stuff you have to deal with. One question earlier, you talked about the company needs to talk the real talk. That is a very tough thing to do. Now, ultimately, that brand manager is just a person who also has their values and beliefs and belief systems, and also has a particular type of level of intelligence, be that EQ, IQ, all of that kind of stuff, plus the underlying knowledge base that they've created. So what makes a good brand manager then? If they have to know all of this, that just sounds excruciatingly hard. So what are some of the main sort of features or traits that are necessary for a good brand manager today? But I also want to touch here on one point, because I know that you work a lot on people's well-being and sort of especially in the leader side. So I want to know, like, what does it mean? What are those key traits for someone to be a good brand manager, or even just to be a good, VP of marketing or anything like that, while keeping in mind all the business aspect, all of the ethical aspect, and all the personal well-being in mind? So I guess the
Very
short.
interesting
Oh,
question,
sorry.
because a lot. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, it seems there's some lag. So I guess the short question would be, and I'll just like squish it down to, what would be the three traits that you would hope every head of marketing or every head of brand should have to be good at what they're doing today?
Well, the first thing, I think that you really have to be people friendly, or you really have to have an interest in people. I really think that you really need to have an interest in people, that you really have to go into the needs of your customer, because you started with seeing from the customer perspective, not only from the company. So if you're not interested in really helping the people along, you would never come across with having a great brand campaign for me. So that's the first thing, really be interested and open-minded and people-friendly, that you really have a look into your data. So the second thing is, for me, to have this data perspective. So you have really to be a person that is data driven and also relates on data, but also knows how to interpret data, because, you have those people. Yes. You have those departments, but you have really to keep in mind that you don't do a brand campaign like 20 years before and you don't have enough data to interpret it. So how do you do attribution modeling, marketing mix modeling, how you go more into the funnel steps where people then buy? Because in the earlier stages, you had these awareness campaigns and you had KPIs on how many people have it seen, how is your market reach, but okay, then it cut it. And there you had how many sales I have. And now you really have to go step by step. How do I do my brand campaign and awareness and brand strategy, and where do come my customers in? So the second thing is that I really think that they need to be data driven. And the third thing is, I think they need to be a bit creative. So don't be this mega creative person, because you have your creative agency, you have your team player, and so on. Yeah. But if you're only this mind people, so this having all your strategy coming from theoretical AIDA models and what else, yeah, and you're not this creative person for new ideas, for new things where you can be outstanding, then I think it's much harder than in earlier stages, because in earlier stages you had those companies having big budgets and doing great campaigns. And now you have small companies, small budgets, but great campaigns, because they get to the needs of the people. They have their data clear, and they really support their clients well. So you have much more competition, I think. Yeah, so it's really my opinion. Yeah, you have much more competition than you had it a lot of years before, where only the big ones with huge money could do great campaigns, because you had only TV, radio, poster. And now you have so many great social media campaigns reaching much more people with small budgets.
Okay, so I'll take this and then add up to the complexity. So we were talking about brand managers or even VPs of marketing at a particular company. Now, you've worked with MediaCom as well, which is a company that works with hundreds and thousands of brands. And oftentimes when we're in that position and we have all of these new clients coming in, and maybe a lot of these clients don't match with our personal values as human beings. How do we do a good job? How do we make sure that we're not stepping on our individual values, but at the same time, we maybe love that job? We love most of the clients, but there's always some clients that come in that we have to deal with. How do we sort of build or resilience around that ethical aspect, but more of also the well-being aspect as just a human being?
Very interesting question again. Not easy. Because I think you have those personal values, and you have those personal values of your clients and of your employees. And even if you're a company not very ethical, you're more unethical, but nevertheless, having a look on their people and really care about their employees, about their people, then it can also be fine for me as employee and marketing person working for this company. So it's so hard, because I have those personal values of employees and the values of the customer. And yeah, you have to have this match to values from the customer and from your company. And even if the market segment then is so, yeah, but it's okay if you say, okay, that's my love clients, and I want to deal with them. And also I would try to find employees also matching those values, or saying, okay, my value is money, and I want to get my good money and have my good life with my company. And it's also fine, because my value is having the base, coming out of the money, and then my life, and there I put my values in. It's also fine. So it's so, for me, those value topics is so hard. But on the other hand, I have, I was responsible for a big sustainability campaign, and this was so great, because I saw what it makes with your employees and with the people, telling, hey, come on, do you know what you have, which impact you have in your company doing the right things? And the motivation was higher. People, they had great ideas, new ideas, creative ideas, how to communicate, how to do the products, and so on. And so I believe it's much easier to motivate people either clients or employees if the values are matched.
So, okay, I'm going to take a second there to process this, because I think what you're saying is something that a lot of companies have split. So I'll expand on this with a bit of probably my opinion, and please, like, point out if I'm saying something that you wouldn't agree with, because I think this is a very, very crucial aspect in today's new world of work. More and more people are signing up for companies, exactly as you say, that share the same values. So it's not more about just getting that wage at the end of like that paycheck, but it's more about, do I actually believe what this company believes? Now, companies tend to do most of their work in their branding, in their customer facing brand. And when they do their employer branding, it feels sometimes like they're doing two different things. They treat that differently,
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that value, specifically those values that you mentioned, they don't echo across all the aspects of communication of the company. And so as a company, you try to be great and you try to be fun for your employees because you want to retain them, but at the same time, now you have all of this payroll that you have to go for. So your cash is, you're being stripped of cash, and I'm speaking specifically for smaller companies here. And so you have to run to do the sales. So you end up in this trap of having to take maybe some clients that overstep on your values boundaries. Now, it's not even a question. It's just a matter of, like, how do we even position, like, how do we take care of ourselves if we're a small company, if we're a growing company? Let's say we're a Series A company, right? We've just gotten this investment. We have our product market fit. I'm the head of marketing now in this company, and all I'm doing is trying to push on customer base. But now an extra issue is added because I have to bring all of these values with my head of people or HR. I have to
Mm.
pile up all the values internally and also do the marketing for the team. And all of that has to be consistent. So we're in such a big, how do I call it? It's a paradigm shift, but it's such a tough world to be in when you're in that position, right? Because at the end of the day, you're a head of marketing, and honestly, you don't take a lot of the decisions that the C-suite will be taking in regards to the direction of the company. But you're the person, as you mentioned earlier, you need to talk the real talk. Now you're in this position where you
Mm.
might disagree with your peers, with your managers of your own, but you still have to do the real talk. So I just wanted to point it out there and maybe just get your sense in it as to how do we how do we manage the situation just as people where these values have to be shared across the channel.
Well, I'm such an optimistic person, I would say it, yeah. And um, so I would answer it from more sides. Yeah. So on the one hand, you have every time this short term view and the long term view. And for the startup companies, they really need to they have these investments and they really need to get money. Yeah. But on the other hand, if you set the base and if you have those you have the time for the values and the time for your team and really to have these blocks in your company so strong, then you have long time on a long term view, much more success. But it's it's so positive. I have so positive emotions about that because I don't, we are all human beings and we are heart minded and we want to live a good life and we are living in such a great world. Yeah. And then you have those problems coming out from stress, burnout of people, higher, much more money and so on. Yeah. You understand where I want to come to. Yeah. And on the other hand, you have this confidence in your people. Have the confidence in your people, that they are doing the right things and let them do, then so if you have the people with the right skills, yeah, then they run for you when they are matched with their values again. So but not easy to answer because yes, but I'm not the friend of hire more money and so on. Yeah, that's a bit a problem sometimes, because you have to go for your team and your people, and also go for the company and say, come on, we need to do sales. But because then the people, they don't have a workplace anymore, even especially in startups, when you don't make money. But set the base that everything can be developed. That's my opinion. And don't run from the first. I don't know if I get across what I wanted to say,
I
but
think so.
take this time, look in your data and your potential, having the right people, develop the people, and then they run.
So, so I think a couple years ago, only a couple years ago, most VCs would talk about investing in businesses and in people who have a vision. So vision was the big issue. Simon Sinek would say you start with why. But the why of Simon Sinek goes much broader than the vision for the product or the company. Now, I think if
Yes.
I may piggyback off of what you were saying, was practically now a company founder should not only run for a vision, but rather, together with a vision, they need to be sure what their own values are before they even start the business. And so they have the vision, which will run for where the product, where the company is going to go, what impact it's going to have in the world. But at the same time, that impact and the way that we would build that business would be on top of a set of values that need to be clarified. And that, I think, takes us, and if you agree to that, and I suppose you do in that respect, I think that brings something to the table of all the founders and company leaders to say, first, you need as a person to be up to a certain degree self-actualized, to deeply understand your personal values before you take on to building a
Yes.
business and then just dragging people around to make money. Would that be
Yes.
a decent characterization of that conversation?
Yes. Yes. I think that would also be my opinion, because great leaders of the world, they are not only the great leaders of big companies, but great leaders for people. They really are clear on what is the really feeling here inside, and the values, and the values on top. Then you have the products and the people and management and so on. So yes, I would agree here on this point.
So then I'll turn it around with the exact opposite question. Considering what we just discussed, right? And we're talking about values, we're talking about making people's lives that work with you and around you, be that your customer or your employee and your teammate. So sharing all those values, building a better life. Now, seeing that this is not exactly happening across the board, and understanding that a lot right now, companies have a lot more understanding of people and of psychological aspects of knowing a person and how to play around with people. And let's talk about customers first here. So brand managers, VPs of marketing, VPs of brand tend to understand much better now in a psychological level what our customers are thinking, how are they feeling, what kind of personality do they have. So they have this opportunity today to practically push people towards where they want to push them. Question that comes with that is, are brands becoming evil today?
Um, on the one hand, yeah, I would say yes, because they are working with fears of people. They are working with those big dreams, and then they don't have the solution. And everything is so shiny, and you can do it very easy, very shiny, and then for the customer itself, it does not really help. Yeah. So on the one hand, yes, because you have so much data, and if you do it clever, we are all human beings, and all this in 100 millions of milliseconds, it works. Yeah. When you do it clever with big money. So you have those companies having huge money and doing this thing with you, you buy this product and then you are frustrated. Yeah. So on the one hand, yes. Yeah. But on the other hand, I think if you do it clever and you have this data and you have these employees coming to your company, telling you the outside perspective of your company, younger people coming into the company, going for change management and really thinking new ways and keeping new ideas, testing very easy, very easy and fast, like the lean startup concept. Yeah, having those ideas, have it tested, have your data ready, and then doing the loop again and doing it better for the customer. And you really have the solution making it better for the customer. Then it's great. So coming to your question, on the one hand, yeah, they are becoming evil and it frustrates me what there is on the market. And on the other hand, it's so amazing things like, we have met her at Startup Live, Bruce Lee. I think that the product was called Bruce Lee. Looking into the data where bread is, where bread is wasted and going to those company and doing out of the wasted bread a good product and with the values for your employees and clients and so on. Yeah. So yeah, on the one hand, yes. On the other hand, no. And I think it's great possibilities nowadays you haven't had some years before.
So, okay, I would want to make this sort of almost very clear for people out there that might find themselves in a situation where it's ambiguous as to is the company that they're working with somewhat evil or not. So I would say if you have specific examples, that would be even better. But just maybe we go with, what are 3 unethical things that brands are doing today that practically make them evil?
Well, on the one hand, I think that they are really working with fears and looking into data and social media sentiments and then using those fears, but don't have really the product ready. As I'm thinking I do have an example. Or on the one example for me is also Amazon having the data where you buy the product and making it cheaper or more expensive if you have an iPhone or not. Yeah, if it would come from the value that the people they have more, they should pay more. Yeah, then you can say, okay, is it fair or not? Yeah, but if it only comes from if it's an iPhone and where you're located, but you need to buy more, pay more for it. Maybe it's the one big Christmas present and had an iPhone, and now he has to pay every time more for the product. So, for example,
It's a very good example, by the way. Very good example. Thanks for sharing it.
Oh, thank you. I'm thinking if I have another example.
It's fine. We can come back to it later as well.
Okay,
that's totally
great.
fine.
Great.
That's all right. So, but I've just asked about the evil stuff. Let's ask about the good stuff. I'm a brand manager at a company. Okay. I'm going towards brand most of the time, but it goes across the board in communications. But what would be the 3 ethical things that I should be thinking about in order to make my customers' lives better and think of my customers' well-being overall?
The 3 ethical things you said.
Right. Or at least to make sure, like, what steps should I take to make sure that what I'm doing in regards to communicating and getting people to subscribe to what I'm trying to sell, for that to be somewhat ethical and just to think about people's well-being, keeping in mind that I still have some KPIs to reach and to report to my boss, so to speak.
I think companies, they are much more doing in the sustainable area. So I think you could talk hours about and where you start and where you end. For example, we did for the last campaign, we really had a look into media spendings. So where do we spend our media, and do we need Amazon and Co, or do we want to support the Austrian market? So when you do the media in Austrian media, then you support people in Austria and workplaces in Austria and so on. So where start to be ethical, and where to end, and what talking about, because when you really be centric, customer centric and human being centric, and this across the whole customer lifetime cycle, then you have a lot of aspects to talk about, and even your supply chain. So is it really necessary to get your products from, I don't know, from which countries, or can you do it more sustainable in Austria, for example, or not that abroad? Yeah, so maybe you have a question going more in one aspect if you're interested in. So
Yeah, well,
to make it clear,
I think one of the aspects that keeps coming back in this conversation, and maybe I don't stop specifically in this question, but one of the aspects that keeps coming back is it's as if I believe your underlying message is that we really need to be very empathetic as human beings in this profession. So when you say customer centric, I understand that that's a buzzword, and to me, by the way that you're explaining it, it doesn't sound like you're using it from a buzzword perspective. It's more about that human to human connection that you require, so to speak, from these brand leaders. So now, considering that that's an aspect, what do we need to do to build more of that empathy, but also make sure that we're also being fair to the business that we're working with, right? How do we navigate that conversation?
I personally think that the greatest motivation comes out from the persons on themselves. So if you manage to have a company where leader having people talking to them and bringing new ideas in, new ways of communication, new values, new perspective of the customer, of the client. For example, having PR, not a PR communication like you do it in the classical way, but doing brand ambassador campaigns. But brand ambassador campaigns not only as doing a campaign on this, but having employees talking to the board members, talking to key players, and they then tell what are the cool things we are doing in a company, but the things they need to be cool, because otherwise they won't do it on their own channels, on social media channels, where they are talking to friends, to family, and so on. Yeah, so that could be one aspect. Like we had one idea, so bringing your trainees in the first weeks, making them to the most important people in the company. Because they come from the outside, they come from the customer perspective, they tell you what is the feeling the people have looking from the outside on this company and on the product, then bringing new ideas in, but are also open to change things that then increase the KPIs. And that's not easy, because you have people doing years and years and years the same thing. And now this comes now that the value thing and the customer-centric thing and the sustainability, you need to do things other than the years before. And then comes in change management and fear of people and employees with all this digital stuff coming in, because they don't want to change, because then they lose their jobs in the extreme way. Yeah, because doing more digital, they have a fear. They don't need us anymore. But if you have those people open-minded in their head, really saying, okay, change is a thing I can also I can support and I can learn new things. No matter how old I am and how long I'm in the company, I'm open for these new things. And if you manage to really have this possibility in the company, then change things, have these KPIs and seeing it works, the perfect world. But it's only from the a vision and a very positive look on how to do brand
Well,
campaigns.
fair enough, but I would actually say that that's not only sort of a theoretical aspect. So, and I felt it was a fantastic spin of our whole conversation until now, because earlier we discussed about, okay, we have customer facing brand, we have employer facing branding, right? But now, if you're hiring new trainees and you're bringing them to meet the C-suite, from a customer perspective, that means that unless our brand functions as a single organism, then everything falls apart. And I think that's an extremely good tip for anyone listening out there, that, you know, unless your customer wants to become your employee and vice versa, and your employee your customer, then maybe there's something wrong with your brand. And I think that was like just a fantastic way to spin it, the way you did it, and I love that very much. So I think we're going to include that a lot in our discussions later, because that's a great way to look at it, and it's a full circle of values that completely circulates. And if there's a break somewhere, so if you're a brand leader out there and you want to measure how well your brand is doing, potentially try to hire your customer, or try to get your team to buy your product. So that's a great way to put it out there, I think.
Additionally, to make it more concrete, really
Mm.
giving your trainees who are coming from the digital world, and it's the daily thing, and the others, they struggle maybe, but give them the confidence, the tools, and the people, the stakeholder in the company. I believe they do the best creative campaigns for you if your target group is a younger audience, for example. It's easier to have a lot of meetings with the creative agency, a lot of struggle with understanding that the agency understands what you are doing. And if you can do this more, I don't know how to say it now in English, to verzahnen, to mix this, and to make this more really inside out but outside in thing together, then for me it would be the best solution.
Definitely. So okay, so let's say we do that, and we're doing that for the company in a particular region, but more and more people are leading global brands, because the world is getting more connected, obviously, and we're building bigger and bigger brands. Now, what we're facing, and not even going from geography to geography, sometimes even within the same space, we're heading more and more towards an ethical relativist world, where there's more than a single view of the truth, and more than a single view of what is right and wrong. And all of those values tend to be put to the test, because from one place to another, the very same values will be perceived very differently. And even if the core word of the value is the same, there's a lot of contention as to what it means. So again, okay, I am leading a brand, supposedly of a large international company. Where should I base my system of values to be sure that when translated, or when I'm building this brand globally, it still remains within some bounds of an ethical grounds? Again, keeping in mind this moral relativist space that we're living in.
What do you mean exact with where is it based?
So, considering that the
Or
world,
where should it be based?
rather, where should it be based? Like, what do I do as a brand leader, right? We have the values of the company. Different countries will perceive those completely differently. And I'm speaking countries because it's the easiest example. How do I manage my own values also as a brand? across all of these countries and making sure that I'm not going to offend anyone anywhere. And that I'm going to be correct also to my own beliefs, considering that I will need to change in a particular other setting. How do I manage that situation?
That's interesting because you have a lot of time headquarters doing campaigns for every region, for every country. What really makes sense because you have the base, which is everything the same for every country, for every people, for every, when your values are clear. Yeah. It's very tricky on the point how really is the feeling you have which comes across to the client, because then it really depends on easy example. Yeah, is the people, do I see an Austrian person on the mountains in my campaign, or do I see some people where I don't have the direct emotional connection, for example. Yeah, and then it's really tricky because then there's often such those hundred seconds where I have the feeling, no, that does not fit to me. So I think you have, even this with language, yeah, when you don't have this native speaker going across language, especially when you do social media campaigns, then, and you really need this native and this, sympathetic way, because we all need, we want to build brands that are likable. We want to be sympathetic. We want to have our clients those good feelings. Then you really need to be on point with messaging and with your way of communication. And that for me, it's so important it makes sense to centralize both things, because you have this target group, and the target group now in the digital work, they can pick from everywhere. So you have also this Austrian style of people sitting in the US, for example. Yeah. And the style of people is the same. And now I reach him also in the US. Yeah. But on the other hand, you really need to focus on what comes across for this segment of people I want to reach. Not with boundaries and concerning different countries, but on this, how can I reach them?
That was a trick, right? So we had the World Cup in Qatar that sparked a lot of these issues of cultural differences, and we're talking, the same championship that we've loved for ages, but all of a sudden it becomes this big contention, and it's very hard to appreciate sometimes different cultures, different sets of values, while at the same time, especially when they contradict your own values. And I think this is one of the tricks that I haven't been able to find a good, steady middle ground, I'd say. Whenever I see brands, they continuously struggle with that issue, right? Of what's happening in that other country, because now all of a sudden you have to stand, let's say, and you'll see this across almost all global brands, right? Most global brands will react during the month of LGBTQ community, and they will put out there all the, they'll update all their social media, but only on some specific countries. And that automatically becomes an issue in some other countries where that is not updated. Now, the point is, do we as brand leaders stay strict to our values regardless of the space, considering that we may harm our brand? Or do we actually take this sort of ethical relativist stand and say each country will have different ethical standards, and we will change ourselves according to those values? So where should we stand, really?
As I'm a very human-centric person, I also want to highlight here that every person, every country has other problems. So we are such, how to say it, we are so lucky to can live here in Austria with all these things we have here. And then we are doing here campaigns. And for example, in our region is a country, they are not on this they really have problems. We don't have problems in Austria, if you call it like this. Yeah, this is only for, they really have problems. And then you come with a campaign that works in Austria, but not in this other country. And I don't want to mention another country, but look on the Eastern. So that is such a gut feeling you have as a manager doing things where you destroy people in other countries. That doesn't work.
Well, that
And then you have to establish people and subsidiaries or people in the headquarter coming from this region, having connections to this region, having stakeholders there, that you, nevertheless, if you want to globalize your things, nevertheless, you have to have a look on the problems you want to solve for people in a region or a segment. There must not be a region, could be a segment of your target group.
that I believe is probably the best answer I could have gotten. At least it did answer my own question, right? Let's be honest, because it is so hard to sort of cut it with a knife. Whereas I believe where your answer is going is, again, going back to that empathetic level, is rather look at what's happening locally. And that might be that it comes to the contention where with what I think and believe right now, right here. But contextually, we have to be aware of that. And I think a lot of the
Yes.
pain that we're struggling with as cultures in today's world is that we're not taking the time to understand that contextually it does
Yes.
make sense over there.
Absolutely.
We might not agree with it, not at all, but yeah, sorry.
Yes, what really makes sense, for example, in the digital world, to centralize the how to call it, to spread your message, because you have technical possibilities, you have ad serving, and you can spread the message easily. Yeah. So that makes sense to really have to look on your processes. Do you still need to do a lot of manually, for example, sending a banner from A to B, yeah, to this platform? How can you really optimize the process here? And really, do you need to send this tag to implement the banner? Is it necessary to do it manually? Do you need this person or this task? Not the person. So do you need this task, or can you do it more technical and use their optimization things? So I think here on the process side, when you are clear with your messages, look on your process. How can you then centralize here to make it easier, more fast forward and thing that makes sense. If you do it together, maybe you have then more time for really being on point and clear with your messages and problem solver. And on the other hand, make processes easier, smarter, and so on. Like creative sessions. Do you need having 10 people from creative agency, customer, and so on in one meeting, and they are in one meeting room, and they are flying across the countries? Or can you do it having the people there, do it digitally, and having great tools working on creative tasks also, if you're not sitting together in one room?
We're past time, but I have one last question, and I'll let you go. So,
Go
because
ahead.
I know a lot of us has been there, and I think it's crucial that, with your experience, you would probably be able to help just uplift people from that position. There's all of these cases where businesses will run into. They'll say, "Oh, our brand isn't quite working the way it should. We don't know what we're doing. People aren't connecting with us. We're trying. We've put all these messages, but we're not getting any likes. Nobody else is commenting. I don't know what's happening. What do I do?" So if we find ourselves in that sticky situation where for some reason we're just not being able to get out of a continuous sort of negative loop with our brand, what would be the at least three things that we can just do from that moment to be able to move one step further, at least move the needle, if I may?
For me personally, the first step would be really have this sentiment market analysis and looking deeper into where is the problem. So, or why is the problem? So what are people really talking about? And open this discussion. It's so hard and so easy asking the World Wide Web, for example, in social media, what is my problem? Really, but you have those companies dropping a question concerning a product, supply chain, and so on. But then they also have to need dealing and living with the comments. For example, on the website, having those recommendation thing and feedback loops and so on. It's nice to have feedback loops if you don't take it seriously. So how open are you to really ask where your problem is when you can't see it in yourself and in your company and with talking about it? Because I'm absolutely sure that the people, they sitting days and night in the company and thinking about how can I do it. But if it don't get better, then really be open-minded and ask people out there from your customer, and you have this mystery shopping and so on things. Yeah. So I think you have really go this step back. The second thing is, for me, maybe you have to kill products, really kill products, even if people say in the company, oh God, it's my holy product and it's the best product for the last years and so on. And if you kill products, you kill brand strategies, and you think brand strategies on another way, because when you think it from problem solver from the product, and you have a product that solves the problem, then you make brand strategy different. So it's every time a loop. Yes, and I said it before. For me, it could be really a game changer. Getting people into your company, coming from your market segment, and then working really together with them. Onboarding in companies, how does onboarding work at the moment in a lot of companies? People don't have time. They are very stressed. The people, they have to do the very quick do things and take their tasks and do them. But taking the time in the first phase, going with them to the board members, to stakeholders, to key people, to what else, and really talking with them and developing things. I think that could be such an, for me, really a game changer. It could be a game changer, and having then brand ambassadors, not telling about the brand is the best, but developing them and train them to how can you be a presenter of the company and you're really proud of it. And everywhere when I talk in my, not only digitally, I'm really proud of my company, and what does it need to be proud of my company? And this comes into brand campaigns.
Perfect. Bettina, thank you so much for
You're
your time.
welcome.
Honestly, this has been great for me. I've learned a lot myself. I really hope that people hearing out there will have learned something.
Great,
Um,
great.
but I really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you so much for your time. And
You're welcome.
I'll definitely be pinging you very often from here
Yeah.
on now.
Thank you very much. Because on my side, it's every time you think about how can you really help people with what you're saying, and isn't it things saying people exactly the same? But it's really my opinion, and thank you for really open-minded question and asking concerning my opinion. So thank you very much for the invitation.
Pleasure.